NHL free agent frenzy continues. We have some more signings, plus we also have some of our rookie signings, including one of the top picks in the 2023 NHL draft. We have news on players filing for salary arbitration, a promotion in Detroit, and Jerard Tarasenko has fired his agent. We'll discuss that situation and all the signings coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have some very interesting information and some signings to take a look at here today. Let's get started first with a bunch of signings, including a couple of interesting rookie contracts. The Montreal Canadiens today signed David Reinbacher to his 3-year entry-level contract, $950,000 average annual value. He's also capable of earning, I think it's around $1 million per season in performance bonuses on top of his salary. He also has a European assignment clause in years 1 and 2. Now, that's not really a big deal. It is very likely that for the upcoming season that he probably goes back and plays in Europe, but the season after, he probably will likely go to North America. Now, he has also said that he's willing to talk to the Habs and kind of decide what they feel is best. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibilities that he sees maybe sometime in the American Hockey League this year. I would not be surprised if the most likely outcome is we see him go to Europe to start the season, maybe come over and finish up and get a handful of games in the AHL at the end of the season. That's a possibility from there, depending on how Laval is doing. Maybe he comes over later, joins them at the end of the year. So, but just because he has a 2-year possibility of an assignment clause, I would not worry about that at all. It just makes things easier to have that sorted out now. For example, in year 2, let's say he doesn't make the Montreal Canadiens NHL club at a training camp. Sometimes what we've seen in some prospects do is they'll go to the American Hockey League, and depending on how things are going there, over time, maybe they decide, you know what, maybe he's better served to go back to Europe, and they don't have to, get any exceptions or negotiate that. It's already in the contract, easy to figure out, and it's just really easy to do. I know I've seen a lot of mixed reactions on the Reinbacher pick. Obviously, there was a lot of talented players in the 2023 NHL draft, and personally, I think a lot of Habs at this point are overreacting. I think he looks to be a really good defenseman, and will likely anchor your top pair there, a few years down the road, not too distant future. So Reinbacher gets his 3-year ELC. He's the second prospect to sign. Obviously, Adam Fantilli was the first. I'm surprised we haven't seen Connor Bedard sign yet in Chicago, and a few others as well that'll likely get their contracts out of the way early. We probably will both see a few of these guys go straight to the NHL, and most of which will be a year or two away from making their debuts. Another, our 3-year entry-level rookie contract getting in place today as well is Winnipeg Jets, potential goalie of the future, I think. There's a real possibility here. 19-year-old Dominic Consentus. He is a goalie who was drafted in the 7th round, not this past draft in 23, but last year in 22. And he was the OHL goalie of the year this past year for the North Bay Battalion. A phenomenal season. First-team All-Star in the OHL, was a second-team All-Star in the CHL. So certainly one of the best goalies in Canadian junior hockey last year. Had a phenomenal breakthrough season, so that was good to see of him. 19 years old, still young, still developing, but nice to see the Gents have such a promising goalie prospect in their system, especially given where things are at with the team right now with Hellebuyck and the uncertainty and what's going to happen with him. And then they have Brossoit. I mean, obviously this guy's a couple of years away, at least from likely turning pro. He's going to play another year of junior. Probably need some time in the American Hockey League. So we're looking at least a few years down the road, but at least that, promising prospect is there in their system. We also have some other regular NHL signings as well, including a couple from Philadelphia. The Flyers today signed, you can almost call him a journeyman now, Victor Mete, defenseman. Mete gets a 1-year, 2-way contract, $775 at the NHL, $450 at the American Hockey League, with a total guarantee of $500,000. So that's a pretty lucrative 2-way deal. Obviously, Mete will have more of an opportunity with a team like Philly to get NHL minutes, so we'll see how things go the last couple of years between this time in Toronto and Ottawa. Hasn't really gone to best. He's been, for the most part, a spare part. A few years ago in Ottawa, he did get a chance to play a lot, but it wasn't impressive enough to get re-signed. Went to Toronto, didn't really get much of a chance there. Battled a lot of injuries last year, and now here we are in Philly. So we'll see if he can get his career on track. They've also signed young defenseman Ronnie Attard. He needed a new deal. He gets a 2-year contract. The first year's a 2-way deal. The second year is a 1-way deal. The NHL average annual value, $850,000. So that's a pretty good contract there. He does appear to be one of the defensemen they're high on to be a part of the team's future. Couple signings in Long Island as well. The New York Islanders have signed Julian Gauthier, who finished up last year between the New York Rangers and the Ottawa Senators. Did not get qualified, became a free agent. He actually gets a 2-year deal out of Lou Lamoriello. Again, just like Jerard, the first year is a 2-way deal. The second year is a 1-way deal. Average annual value $787,500. So Gauthier can be a decent checking forward. He's got good size. He's like 6'3", 6'4", over 200 pounds. He's a really good skater. He's got good quickness. Hasn't really been able to translate the offense he showed in junior to the NHL level, but is slowly working on becoming a more effective bottom six checker in the link side. He's got the size. He's got the speed. If he can get the checking defensive game down pat a little bit better, then he should be able to carve out hopefully a decent career as a bottom six forward. So a pretty low risk signing by the Islanders that could work out for them. They've also signed Carson Kuhlman as well. He also gets a 1-year, 2-way deal, $775 AAV. A couple of signings as well in Boston. They've signed young goalie prospect Kyle Kaiser. He gets a 1-year, 2-way deal, $775. And they've also signed winger Jacob Luke Lockow to a 2-year contract. It's a 2-way deal both years, $787,500 at the NHL level. And the Florida Panthers today announced they've signed former Buffalo Sabre Rasmus Asplund to a 1-year, 2-way deal, $775 as well. He did finish up last year. I believe he was traded to Nashville, but the Sabres is where he spent the bulk of his career, where he was drafted. And then now he's a Florida Panther. Detroit announced today that they promoted a longtime member of their front office, Chris Draper, longtime player there as well, has been in the Red Wings organization in one capacity or another for a large part of his adult life. He's now considered the assistant general manager and the director of amateur scouting. Before, he was the director of amateur scouting only, so he's added the title of AGM. So obviously he works quite closely there with Steve Yzerman, but specializes on the amateur side of things. So certainly well-deserved. Draper's been there a long time, paid his dues, and nice to see the promotion on that front. We also found out, too, a couple of players in Minnesota have filed for salary arbitration, and that includes Brandon Duhaime and goaltender Philip Gustafsson. So they will be able to continue negotiating with the Wild, but they will have an opportunity, of course, to go to arbitration if it's not settled on their own prior to whatever the hearing date is that's settled. That is the deadline as well. I would suspect we'll likely hear about other players doing the same process here, filing for arbitration, once we get all the teams and once everything's officially announced later. But for right now, that's the only team I've seen word on, but I would suspect the next few hours we'll get a lot more of that. And as I mentioned, some very interesting, somewhat spicy news out of the NHL regarding Vladimir Tarasenko. I was very curious to hear today from Elliot Friedman that Vladimir Tarasenko has fired his agent. So he was being represented by Paul Theophanos. And of course, he represents a lot of other Russian players as well, including some of Tarasenko's good friends, including Artemi Panarin. That's one right off the bat that I know for sure. There's several others as well. And he's now being represented by CAA, which is Pat Brisson and GP Barry. Now, but there's a lot of different stories going around of what happened here. Essentially, the two were not happy with how things were going, and Tarasenko decided it was his agent's fault and fired him. But there is some rumors saying that there was an opportunity for him to sign a 1-year cheap deal like Blake Wheeler did with the Rangers, 1-year, $1 million deal, and that he was seriously considering doing that. And the Hurricanes have put an offer on the table for more money. I don't know the exact amount. And that his agent wanted him to take the Carolina offer because it was more. And he wanted to take the Ranger offer, and apparently they were having disagreements that way. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but that was one of the stories that's been floating around social media. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But Andy Strickland, who of course works for Bally Sports, has his own podcast, well connected to the St. Louis Blues. So, of course, Tarasenko, with a lot of history in St. Louis, is a player that Strickland certainly knows lots about and would have connections to find information on. He said essentially at this point that, he's at this point getting a fresh start, that at this point is looking like Ottawa might be the destination now, because we've been hearing Carolina or Ottawa in the last few days. There's really been no talk about the Rangers. And I'm not really sure that's really much of an option anymore. I mean, or maybe earlier in the first part of free agency, there was a opportunity there to go to the Rangers, but I don't know what happened here. But at this point, any offers that were being discussed or were available to him before are not really available. Like they're kind of starting fresh here all over again because obviously his new agents are going to be starting, see what he can get. Clearly wasn't quite pleased, but according to what Strickland was saying, that there's multiple offers in that $5 to $6 million range, like, $5.5 to $6 million. Multiple terms available out there as well. I don't know what's all being offered, but the way Strickland put the message on Twitter was almost like the Alex DeBrincat trade, which is speculated to go down between Ottawa and Detroit if it ever gets finalized and worked out. That once it does, that Tarasenko likely goes to Ottawa. At least it's the way he made it sound. Now, it doesn't mean that's going to happen, of course, but that seems like the way things are trending. But I honestly don't know. And honestly, I think for Ottawa's sake, if they can move to DeBrincat, and they can get a player back through the trade that can play and sign Tarasenko, they might be able to get two players for the same money that DeBrincat wants. And I think overall there'll be a deeper team and a better team because of that. So honestly, I think that might be best. I wonder if a Detroit trade might be like a first-round pick because the Red Wings have two of them next year. They have their own in Boston's. And then a player off the roster. They either go a young player like a Jonathan Berggren or maybe a Dominic Kubalik or something like that. I think the Sens might be better off anyways, but it'd be the sooner things can get finalized for these guys and get things settled would be better. So what the real story is between Tarasenko and his agent and what really led to all things going down, we may never know exactly 100% what the truth is, but certainly some interesting and spicy information to kind of change things up. I said a couple nights ago we had heard that sounds like Tarasenko is going to Carolina, but yet it never got confirmed. And then, like I said, yesterday there was some talk that maybe you should hold on about Carolina. Ottawa's in the mix too, and we really don't know where he's going. And then today, it's like the agent's fired. And this morning, I saw a report saying that he was still, that there was no firm offer, and that it was still kind of weighing multiple options. And then there was one NHL reporter, I believe it was James Nichols, who I think he's working for the Hockey News now. He said that he spoke to a league source, and that the league was aware of Tarasenko signing with the Hurricanes. So he wasn't really sure why it wasn't announced or why it wasn't officially listed anywhere. Obviously, that turned out not to be true. So there's a lot of information that's out there. Obviously, it's not all true. We may not know the whole story, and hopefully we'll get the real deal soon enough, and Tarasenko will sign with somebody and will know what he's doing. So let me know what you think is going to happen down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.